report.
See that happen.
Morning, everybody.
They probably told him not to do it.
So, today's case can be looked at from several different directions. In addition to the three that Yamada Roshi talks about, I'll talk about how I looked at it, because at the time I first was studying this koan, of course, I was working in HR. So I looked at it from an HR perspective. Two monks roll up the blinds, case 26. The main case. A monk once went to Dai Hogan of Serio before the midday meal to ask for instruction. Hogan pointed to the bamboo blinds with his hand. At that moment, two monks who were there went over to the blinds and rolled them up in the same manner. Hogan said, "One has gained, one has lost." Mumon's commentary. Just tell me, which one has gained and which one has lost? If you have one eye opened concerning this point, you will know where National Teacher Serio failed. Nevertheless, you should not inquire into this problem in connection with gain or loss. The verse. The blind being rolled up, bright clarity penetrates the great empty space. Yet the great empty space still does not match the principle of our sect. It is far better to throw away emptiness and everything completely, and with a tight fit, never to let the wind pass through. So there's this koan is here because it leaves room for people to make a myriad different assumptions. So, because there's not a lot of information, it's very vague and ambiguous. It's having just spent time with one of Kaiser's attorneys, that was her objection. Every other question, vague and ambiguous, vague and ambiguous, vague and ambiguous. Because, he pointed, but he didn't give instruction. Yet these two monks got up and did something in response to his pointing. And we don't know what gain or loss meant. Was gaining good? Is gaining bad? Is losing good? Is losing bad? Is doing anything at all good or bad? Is there any good or bad or any gain or loss? So those are all the questions that come up for this, just on the face of this koan. And the first time I read this, which was probably 20 years ago, I remember thinking, if a manager said that to two of his employees, what manner of trouble would there be? Because I could hear the employees coming in to complain about their manager saying, "He said one of us gained and one of us lost." I feel discriminated against. I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? I don't know, but do it. You have to do an investigation. I'm suing. I'm like, okay, here we go again. Because people react to these comments that may or may not have any meaning at all. So what meaning do we give them? What is that? Because we're constantly projecting stuff onto reality, constantly making stuff up and thinking that it's true. So one person may hear that. He didn't say which one gained or lost. He didn't say what any of that meant. What would be interesting is both of them come into my office and complain. He told me that I was the one who lost. Really? And but if they had both thought that they were both the one who gained, would they be in my office? Probably not, because we think
what was gained and what was lost.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was. So We tend to think of one as good and one as bad and one as better than the other, but are they? That's the depth that this koan intentionally leaves. That is not in the explanation. It's not in the koan itself. They're just these vague references. He pointed at what? And why did these monks assume that he wanted the blinds rolled up? Might have been in the middle of the night. What are the blinds up for? And why did they both get up at the same time and roll the blinds up the exact same way? How did that happen? So there are all the questions. But this does bring you into all of those assumptions and brings up why we make those assumptions, why we cast, why we judge, why we make these words mean what we think they mean, why we make this scenario about good and bad and up and down and right and wrong and gain and loss. We get very caught up in this dualism, which is exactly what our school, our sect, is not about. So, and this is why Muman is saying that the teacher failed, because he engaged all three students, because he had three in the room at the time. There's two monks who were rolling up the blinds, and the other monk who was asking the question. He just, and teachers, Zen teachers are known for doing this, is that they will throw you into confusion on purpose to see exactly how you handle it. So he's probably looking at all of their faces. Which one of the monks is going to think he lost? Which one is going to think he gained? Which one is going to, file a lawsuit for being discriminated against?
Do any of them care?
Do any of them care at all? If they just sat down and said, "I just rolled up the blinds," I don't know what he's talking about. He gave the usual signal. He wanted the blinds up. But this is how how often do we do this to ourselves? How often do we overhear a conversation, part of a conversation, and make stuff up? And I often, as I try my best to avoid the news, but it's so invasive at times. And my question is, what part of the story do I not know? What's missing in this scenario? Why are these people fighting? What are the assumptions that each side is making that is causing all this cognitive dissonance that is constantly going on? So in the references to emptiness, this great emptiness that we talk about achieving, and we tend to think that, if I could just grasp this emptiness, that would be my enlightenment, and all is well with the world. I'll have nothing to worry about. But over and over and over again, and I see it in almost every koan. These great teachers constantly say, it's not it. It's part of it, but it's not the whole thing. Because you still have to be, functioning in emptiness and this absoluteness that people conjure up for themselves, where there are no separation, no differences, no rules, nothing applies. That is a trap as well, because you have to function in the world. And in the world, people live in this dualistic point of view and are constantly making judgments and constantly calling things good and bad and up and down and gain and loss. How do we navigate that? How do we navigate reality just as it is? How do we take care of reality just as it is? How do you take care of the situation if it's presented to you? Which is what this koan is doing. This is the case. And you as a Zen student are being called to take care of this situation, putting yourself into the situation and taking care of all four people involved with this. The monk that's asking the question is the two monks who rolled up the blinds and the teacher. That's your job as a Zen student. That's the vow that you take as a bodhisattva, is to save all sentient beings. Doesn't, the assumption is that the teacher doesn't need saving because he's enlightened and he's, got his place set in wherever teachers go when they die. so we tend to, discount, the great sage teacher, but that teacher needs to be cared for too, because he fails in this scenario. How do you fail? How do you take care of the teacher's failure in this scenario as well? And is that failure bad? Is that failure good? How do we cast that? Where does that set in us? All of these questions are of the utmost importance and need to be penetrated into and need to be answered with this koan. Because that's what the koan is all about. It is set up to intentionally challenge you to really look at this from all points of view, especially the point of view of how it shows up in your life. Where do you cast these dualistic judgments, or where are they cast on you, and how do you take care of what you're perceiving someone is saying to you, or not saying to you, however you're perceiving that judgment, if indeed it is a judgment. So this is these are all ways of dealing with this. And just to give you the idea of who these people are, Hogan shows up a few times. He's the same teacher that, I don't know if you've gotten to that, the one where he walks past the cook with his bowls. He's early for dinner. Did we talk about that one? I can't remember. That's earlier in this book. They're all a blur in my head sometimes, because there's so many of them. But this is also the reference to Hogan is also the one about not knowing is most intimate. And in Yamada Roshi's translation, it says not knowing is the closest fit, is how that is translated, rather than most intimate. So that closest fit is also a reference to the verse, the last line of the verse. And with a tight fit, never let the wind pass through. So the wind is your mind, these thoughts that are constantly blowing through and throwing you off course and making you, think that things are anything at all. And we get, swayed and judged and, taken in all kinds of, joy and not so joyous rides with our thoughts, especially when we sit down and do meditation. Because meditation is where all of them come up and there's no stopping them. So where is that place? Where is that tight fit that doesn't allow the wind to pass through? Not that the air isn't there, because wind is just air that's moving. So it's not a place where there's no air. It's a place where there's no wind. So it's and the line before that, it is far better to throw away emptiness and everything completely, because there's no trace. The Genjo koan, study the ways to study the self, to study the self is to forget the self. Forget the self is to be enlightened by the 10,000 dharmas. Several more lines down, and after dropping away body and mind, and being where there is no trace of enlightenment at all. The 10 Oxford pictures, same thing. He goes through all these 10 steps, all 8 steps actually, 8 steps of enlightenment. He gets there. The 9th picture of the Oxford picture is empty. It's an empty circle. It's emptiness. It's the coup. And then he throws it away. And he goes right back to the marketplace, playing his flute, riding backward on the ox. He's having a good time. It's like, life is life. Still got to go shopping. Party on. So this koan is an interesting one in that it just, especially for me, I remember when I was first studying this, it just brought up all kinds of, it just intentionally threw me into this huge quagmire of perspectives and thoughts and possible reactions and my own judgments. And I had all of that to take care of, as I was working through this koan. And it was, and I had to laugh because of course the first thing I go is, okay, how am I going to write this report? After I do this investigation, and which one is going to end up in court? Because that's where they all go. Someone's not going to be happy by saying one was better than the other. And if I came back and said, the teacher was giving you the greatest gift, your boss was giving you the greatest gift by telling you you had gained and lost, you get to decide. And the reality is that since these are not separate ideas, it's not, oneness is not separable in that sense. Oneness doesn't mean sameness, but we're all the two monks. We're all the two monks that got up because somebody pointed at something, and we reacted to that point, and we both of the monks within you got up and rolled up the blinds. And both of you heard that one of you gained and one of you lost. And if you're all one, then you both gained and lost. Right?
Judy Collins. Yeah. Judy Collins says there's something lost and something gained in living every day.
Yeah.
Both sides now.
Both sides now. Yeah. So yeah. Look at love from both sides. I'll have that song in my head.
There's something about illusion in my illusions.
My illusions after. Yes. Okay. Stop. Earworm.
No, it's a good, I really don't know, life, I don't know love, I don't know at all. It's back to not knowing and experiencing both things, both the gain and loss in everything that we experience, because they're both there.
Yeah.
And not being driven one way or the other, because then there's Bob Dylan's. There's no success like failure. Failure is no success at all.
Yeah. So, in which, and then going further is sometimes losing is a good thing.
Right.
Letting go of stuff is a good thing. And sometimes gaining is both a good and a bad thing. So these, but sometimes it takes a while to get there. So our initial reaction is going to, most people get stuck in their initial reaction, the judgment that comes up.
We lost the Zoom.
We did?
It's frozen.
Well, Kirk is moving on. What's up? It's frozen up there.
Yeah.
It's not frozen on my screen. Kirk, can you hear us? So, well, he's not frozen on my screen, so it's the casting that's frozen.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, well, that's fine.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay.
Well, there's something.
Okay, so don't pay attention to that. That screen is not working. My screen is fine, and everyone looks fine on it.
It's really good ventriloquist.
I know. Technology.
I have a question.
Yes,
You said that the milk filled you. Is that correct?
the teacher.
The teacher.
Yes. Well, according to, I didn't say this. Well, Muman said this.
What are your thoughts on how the teacher failed?
So, and what is failure? In this case, because I think what Muman is pointing to is that he's engaging in in a dualistic conversation.
Mm.
So, but sometimes you do that to teach. You bring this up. So in this, Muman is saying, just tell me which one has gained and which one has lost. If you have one eye open according to this point, you will know where national teacher Serial failed. So if indeed we cast the teacher, or if indeed the teacher was really doing this, saying he's judging the monks. You know, one of them, I mean, you could say, you know, one of my initial questions I remember asking about this was one of the monks imitating the other monk and not really sincere, not acting on his own volition? And they both rolled them up the same way, but was that an imitation, and who is imitating whom? So, and in that case, which one is which? Which one lost themselves? And there was no ego in which they were using to get to the lives. That's the one who lost. But which one gained by following the example? Or the other way around. So there's so many myriad perturbations of this. I mean, there are permutations of this that you could just, you know, you could think about this forever and ever and ever, and come up with different ways of looking at them. But what's the ultimate point here? Is there anything that doesn't both lose and gain? Is there any part of nature that doesn't both lose and gain? So the hint I gave last week was there's no ambiguity in nature. Nature has all of these things present all the time in everything in every way. So how is it that, and we are nature, we are the manifestation of nature. So how is it that we are this koan? How is it that we are the two monks? How is it that we are when there's asking the question, how is it that we are the teacher in this? Because these appear to be somewhat opposing factors or opposing points of view in this, and you can set them up that way, or they're just one point of view. Because they're all happening. If you're the one who's reading this koan, if you're the one absorbing this koan, they're all happening within you. And you are not separate from any of these points of view. And how then do you take care of life from all of these points of view? So for me, you know, as an HR professional, I was like, okay, wow. I'm glad I'm retired at this point, but I'm not doing this anymore. But it did. This is when this was so, because this book is one of the first koan books you study in koan study. I thought, okay, this is directly applicable to how I do my job. And this is when koan's kind of settled for me. It's like, okay, this is directly applicable to real life. How do I take care of? Because these aspects will show up in my office in different ways. And how do I take care of all those aspects? If I am all of the aspects of this koan, and all of this is going on, and all these permutations, the different ways of looking at this and being this, how do I take care of this? If I can take care of this whole thing, I can take care of each part. Not that that's easy, ever, but it's there. It's all there. And that's kind of, you know, you get to these points in this practice where you're just like, it doesn't make it any easier or any harder, but now I get it. I get why this is Apple. This is why I'm studying these 900-year-old, stupid koans that make zero sense. Because life makes zero sense. It makes zero sense. How do we apply this? How do we go with this? So here it is. Being intimate with this, being absolutely not separate from any aspect of any part of this koan is what this teaches us. Because we're not. We're not separate, not different, not up, down, better, worse, gain or loss. We're all one. It's all one thing. But that doesn't mean that you handle this same situation the same way every single time. Each different way it presents itself is going to be different. And thus the practice. Why we keep going back, why we keep reinforcing and regaining our foundation in Zazen, because that's where it happens. So I love Yamada Roshi's, and Eiken Roshi it talks about this a little bit too. When Hogan was going to leave his initial teacher, because he was on pilgrimage, the teacher accompanies him to the gate and asks him, after he, what do you want to do with all? Well, when he first got there, the teacher asks him, what do you expect to find from this pilgrimage? And he answers, I don't know. And then the next day or so, he's going to leave, and the teacher asks him, where does it start? The next morning, the master saw him off to the gate. Noticing a big stone in the garden, he pointed to it and asked Hogan, you monks usually say the whole universe is just one mind. I thought it was interesting that he said, you monks. It's like, you people. So you think the whole universe is just one mind, do you? Just tell me, is this stone within the mind or outside of the mind? And Hogan instantly replies, within the mind. And the teacher says, it will be awfully difficult for you to travel around with such a big stone inside of you. At that, Hogan stops and says, oh, maybe I need to stay around and learn some more. And then Yamada Roshi gives what he would say if he had been there. Yamada Roshi is the current translator of this, so he's 20th century talking to his 9th century teacher. He says, I would have answered the master's question as to whether the stone was inside or outside the mind with, quote, I have no time for such silly talk. Ask the stone. Or I might have said, do you have such a strange thing as mind? Show it to me. Or perhaps I would have told him, I don't have outside or inside within me at the moment. Or I could have said, the stone is not outside me, yet I can walk very lightly with it, like this. Bye-bye. So those are all, and I appreciate his examples because there are different ways of, taking care of that question, which is what koans are all about. It is not about coming up with the answer, because there is no the answer to these koans. There is a myriad answers, a myriad ways that we can apply what the koans are teaching us. And depending on who is in front of you, that's who needs to be taken care of. What situation is in front of you, that's what needs to be taken care of. And it's not just this rubber stamped way of oneness that we tend to have. You monks, you think that this is all the same. Like, so answer, riddle me this. So I do have a special place in my heart for this koan, because it was very difficult. It was very difficult to respond to. And I think that every time I went into if I were to go back and respond to this koan, there would be many ways that I could answer it, many ways that I could take care of it. And that's the job. That's the point of this. There is no one way to take care of this oneness, because oneness is not just one thing. This emptiness is just all the possibilities that can possibly come up. Which one is here, right now? That's the one that needs to be taken care of. That's the one I answer. That's the rock. That's at the gate. Those are the two monks. And every time an employee would come in after I read this koan, I was like, okay, which one are you, the gain or the loss? How are you painting yourselves, and how do we paint ourselves in these scenarios? And those things that we paint ourselves in, this is what we project out into the world. how do we trap ourselves with this mindset of duality? Much more fun for me anyway, have me look at this from all the different possibilities and how what I'm doing it. I'm sure there are many more ways that it will come up for me over time as I review these over and over again. But how are they coming? How is this coming up for you?
I was going to comment. It seems like duality is a pitfall. Thinking dualistically is a pitfall.
Well,
but it's necessary.
Yeah. Well, I think anything, non-duality is a pitfall.
Okay.
Anything you're stuck in, pitfall. Because duality is, the minute you open your mouth,